Black power, y'all. Black power, y'all. How y'all doing this morning? Sorry, y'all. Just trying to pin a comment up here, and I'm having difficulty doing that. Okay. Black power, how y'all doing? Make sure y'all share this video. So my phone is doing some stupid stuff. It's not wanting me to pin the comment up here. I have a comment I want to add. And then after that, I will be good to go. I'm sorry, y'all. Self-critical, rather. All right, y'all. I don't know if any of my comrades can put the donation links up. If you can, that would be great. I'm trying to do it, but it is not allowing me to do it. I am not allowed to do that, so I don't know what the problem is. Black power, y'all. Make sure you share in all the groups that you're in. In all the groups that you're in, share. Hashtag shared when you shared it, so we know that you're sharing. We'll give it just 1 or 2 more minutes before we get started. I'm going to keep trying to struggle to put this link up. Black power, y'all. Black power. Okay, y'all. I cannot put the links up to the donation links up. So if anybody has those, I'll be sharing them throughout the live stream. But I'm having problems putting it up myself. I'm not sure why. But if somebody knows those links, if you could share that, I will do my best to pin the links. Let me do one other thing before we get started, and then we will... Okay. Give me just a minute, y'all. I want to be able to look at y'all's comments while I'm doing the live stream, because I want to make sure I can respond and we can have an interactive conversation. So yeah. Okie dokie. Okay. Yeah, if anybody shares those links, I can pin anybody's link. So if you happen to know any of the links, I'm not able to do it from here, but I can pin the link if you post it. But I will be verbally putting those links out, so if you want to donate, you can. So with that, all that being said, y'all, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Nyah Akrele, and I am going to be leading the Revolutionary Book Club this morning. Thank you so much, Kimia. Let me pin that. All right, we got them pinned. So make sure you share the video if you've not already shared. Come into the room. Get ready to put your Read That Back hashtags up. We're about to go chapters 14 through 17 today out of Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. So, yeah, I am... my comrade is sick today, so wish Dia Lungitsani well. He will be back with us next Sunday when we do the Revolutionary Book Club next week. So I will be trying to hold it down with just me, but yeah, wish my comrade to get well. So welcome everybody. Make sure you share to all groups and platforms. And we're going to be going through chapters 14 through 17. If you've never donated to the Black Hammer Book Club, you should. The book club serves as a fundraiser for the Black Hammer organization. So the Cash App is $BH Book Club. So please donate so that we can continue to multiply this great work that we're doing through the book club and all the other committees that we have going on in Black Hammer. All right, y'all. So we've got the links up. We've shared it. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start out with chapter 14. It's titled Freedom. And I think it's important to read the link. Or not the link, but the quote that he precedes the chapter with. The quote is, "Locked in jail within a jail, my mind is still free. What if a person was so oriented that the loss of no material thing could cause him mental disorganization? This is the free agent." And that quote was by George Jackson from Soledad Brother. Excuse me. So this chapter is it's the title is basically the title is Freedom, and this is a chapter where Huey Newton spends the entirety of this portion behind bars. And so this is a time when he in 1964 he was sentenced after the false assault charge against Odell Lee, and he's awaiting sentencing for that charge. And while he's awaiting sentencing, he has to go and serve time at the Alameda County Jail. So these were some of the worst jail conditions, prison conditions that anybody could ever be sentenced to. He discusses how at first he could actually move about because he was a trustee, and he was able to move around the prison or the jail pretty freely. But he didn't keep that title very long. Of course, he began to test the waters. The food conditions were so poor that many of the inmates were striking against the quality of the food and just other conditions in general, and he joined him with that. So it's not long before he's actually he moves pretty quickly from being a trustee where he can move around to being put in solitary confinement. He actually discusses the 4 levels of confinement, and of course the worst is the what they call the soul breaker. He just that room, and I'm just going to read the description of the room. Let's see. Yeah, so he goes, within the jail, 4 levels of confinement: the main line, segregation, isolation, and the solitary, the soul breaker. You can be in jail, but the soul breaker is your last in the world. Okay, so here's where he starts to discuss. He said the floor was dark, red rubber tile, and the walls were black. If the guards wanted to, they could turn on a light in the ceiling, but I was always kept in the dark and in the nude. That is part of the deprivation. The soul breaker is called a strip cell. Sometimes the prisoner in the other cell would get a blanket, but they never gave me one. He sometimes got toilet paper too. The limit was 2 squares. And when he begged for more, he was told no. That is part of the punishment. So that's just an idea of the conditions that he was subjected to. Also, because he was pretty much in the dark all the time, there was no toilet, there was no sink, there was nothing in that room. And in the center of that room, there's like a hole where you would go to use the bathroom. And with no light, if you're walking around it or whatnot, he said that you would sometimes, when you're trying to go, basically you would find it. And I mean, it was just really horrible conditions. So it says the prisoner was supposed to urinate and defecate in that hole. A half gallon milk carton filled with water was my liquid for the week. Twice a day and always at night, the guards brought a little cup of split pea soup right out of the can. Sometimes during the day, they brought fruit loaf, a patty of cooked vegetables. So that's just some ideas of the conditions that he was given. One of the things too, and again, the title of this chapter is called Freedom, is how he got to a point of preservation to where he could I don't want to even say withstand, but just tolerate the conditions while he was there. Because again, this isn't his actual sentence. This is him awaiting sentencing until, he gets put in the place that they want to put him. So on page 105, he starts to talk about how he was mastering, I guess, like eating less, drinking less, so that he wouldn't have to go to the bathroom. Also, go ahead, y'all, and start putting up your hashtag read that backs. We'll go over that pretty soon. So for this chapter, if you have a hashtag read that back, go ahead and quote it, and then we'll talk about it. But he said that basically he took very small sips and very small bites of anything that he ate, so that would take down the amount of times that he would actually have to go and use the bathroom. Because they would only come in, I think they said it was once a week, where they would actually hose out the hole, so that the smell and everything would be put out of there, and then I guess that person would just use that hole again until they come back and they would spray it out again. So just thinking about that condition and having to tolerate that for however long you're there. And again, Huey had decided that he wasn't going to, do what they were asking him to do, to get put back into general population to where he can move about again. This is part of the process that he purposely went through so that he could withstand whatever they would throw at him, whatever the system would throw at him. So he said a secret was the same that Mahatma Gandhi learned to take little sips of nourishment, just enough to keep one's strength, but never enough to have to defecate until the 15 days were up. And that's how long they would keep you in solitary, was 15 days at a time. And then they would take you out, and they would basically see if you agreed or if you were remorseful for what you had done. And then if not, if you were, they would let you stay out. But if not, and basically that the solitary confinement punishment worked. If not, they put you back in there. He also talks about on page 106, where he learned, he didn't know it at the time that it was a yoga posture or a Zen Buddhist posture, but it's a posture where he's laying on his back, but not on his back. He's like your shoulders are kind of arched back, and then your buttocks is basically like on the ground, and there's this arch between your shoulders. And I'm a yogi, so this is how I've done this posture before. But you stay in that position, and yoga and in general it's about a lot of things, but it's about self-preservation. It's about being able to withstand. And so he spent many hours throughout each day in this particular position in order just to help get through the day. It says over a span of time, it's at the bottom of 106. He said, over a span of time, I do not know how long it took. I mastered my thoughts. I thought I could start them and stop them. I could slow them down, speed them up. It was a very conscious exercise. So these are things that you're doing like while you're in these different postures. And I just thought that was pretty amazing. Like even before you know what you're doing, it's like something in you tells you what to do. So he's actually, and this is something important, but it says after 15 days, the guards pulled me out and sent me to a regular cell for 24 hours, wherever I took a shower and saw a medical doctor and a psychiatrist. They were worried that the prisoners, would become mentally disorganized. No shit. In such deprivation. Then, because I had not repented, they sent me back to the hole, and then by then it held no fear to me, so I'd won my freedom. So this is really significant because, again, by withstanding all of this and kind of learning how to tolerate these conditions, because there will come a time when if this is to go as far as it needs to go, there's going to come a time when you will be tortured. Some of us will be tortured, or some of us will be put in such horrible conditions in order to keep us from breaking. You know, you've got to accomplish a mental sense of freedom so that you can withstand, and basically nothing that they do would break you. He goes on to say, and I want to say this is my read that back. Yeah. So my read that back is soul breakers exist because the authorities know that such conditions would drive them to the breaking point. But when I resolved that they could not conquer my will, I became stronger than they were. I understood them better than they understood me. Excuse me. No longer dependent on the things of the world, I felt really free for the first time in my life. In the past, I had been like my jailers. I had pursued the goals of capitalistic America, and now I had a higher freedom. So that was my read that back. Also, I think it was important that later here he references down the line where he's going to be arrested for the murder of a pig, and he was in solitary confinement for that much longer than he was for this particular. I mean, he's just, again, awaiting sentencing. So it says, but 1967, which was when he was indicted or charged for the killing of the pig, he said that wouldn't have been possible without what he had experienced in 1964, which is what we're reading about right now. They go on to say that later that the strip cell and this type of punishment was actually outlawed. You know, outlawed means that if they find another way around it, they could still do it. But they had been outlawed throughout the United States. There was an attorney, Charles Gary, who had actually defended Huey in 1968, and he was instrumental in getting those types of conditions outlawed in California, or in the U.S., but it happened in California. So all in all, he was actually in the hole. Huey was in the hole for about a month. And when he was sentenced to this prison in Santa Rita, and where it was a prison, as if there could be a good prison. There's a prison where inmates were allowed to move about, and, you know, they were tending to like livestock and things of that sort. So they were working on a farm. And Huey ends up getting into an altercation with this other inmate called Bojack, who is basically just a really good overseer for the prison. And he and Huey got into it because, sorry y'all, Huey self-critical over that. I thought I had a more secure thing going for me here. I don't want to lose y'all. Give me just a minute. Bear with me. Make sure my fingers don't get... Alright. How y'all doing? I still got you? Alright. So... Alright, so Huey is actually moved to another prison because of because he got into it with this other inmate, and the inmate couldn't really control Huey's behavior, and they moved into Greystone, which was a maximum security prison, and then he spent the rest of his sentence there. So it says, the Santa Rita administration finally got disgusted with my continual complaints and protests and ships me back to the jail in Oakland, where I spent the rest of my time in solitary. By then, I was used to the cold. Even now, I don't like any heat at all wherever I stay, no matter what the outside temperature. It's just amazing what these conditions that we are, these horrible conditions, like, make it to where we are, we're almost like waiting for the other shoe to drop, so we actually opt for less comfortable conditions, so that if anything like this happens again, we can withstand it, and that we don't get used to like the comforts of things that I think as human beings we should want for anybody and everybody. But it's just something that we make ourselves get used to. So anyways, with all that being said, I want to see what your read that backs were. Thank you, Robert, because I was like, this, if anybody's phone is going to fall during the live stream, it would be me. So Black Power. But I am self-critical. Let me look at your comments. So I'm going to go over here to do that. Let's see what we got. Black Power Wrong. Great to see you too. Read that back. Kimya. Soul breakers exist because of the authorities know that such conditions would drive them to the breaking point. But when I resolve that they would not conquer my will, I became stronger than they were. I understood them better than they understood me. Page 107. Absolutely. So we had the same read that back. Anybody else got any read that backs? Also, there's a part of our book club that we were doing. So hashtag what's on your bookshelf. If you're reading something that you would like to see us read, or something we'd like to add maybe to our reading list, go ahead and drop that as a hashtag what's on your bookshelf. To let us know what you're reading, and we might be able to add that to our reading list. Or you could just say, hey, I'm just reading this, just so we can know what you're reading. So yeah. Also, just a reminder, please donate if you haven't already. BH Book Club is the Cash App, so go there, donate. You can also donate on the Black Hammer website, www.blackhammer.org/donate. You can also go to www.gofundme.org. www.gofundme.com/blackhammer.org, and you can donate there as well. So the link should be pinned here. Comrade Kimya commented that, and that should have been pinned. So drop your hashtags, what's on your bookshelf, also your read that backs if you have any more for chapter 14, and then we'll go on to chapter 15. Chapter 15, Huey discusses Bobby Seale, and Bobby Seale and Huey, and I know we're kind of jumping ahead here, they are the co-founders of the Black Panther Party. So Bobby Seale and Huey Newton, they already had all right, so Chakande is reading, okay, Octavia Butler's Earthseed series. Okay, cool beans. And let's see what else we had here. I wanted to see what, okay, there we go. Dying Colonialism by Frantz Fanon. Okay, I think I have that one on my bookshelf too, comrade. So Bobby Seale and Huey Newton already had a friendship prior to, and then he talks about how they didn't always agree on everything in the beginning, but they remained close even after his incarceration at Alameda. One of the things that he talks about was how they disagreed with at the time anyway, because I think, I don't think Huey talks about how later Bobby came over to his point of view, but at the time, Bobby Seale was more like anti-communist, and I guess was going along with the fact that the U.S. Government wanted to invade. What was it? Oh yeah, because they were on their way, like the Russian ships were on their way to Cuba, and and at the time Bobby didn't understand why we should back that. So, and of course Huey at the time had already been doing a lot of studying and was very much in support of Fidel Castro and Cuba and their revolution. So he talks about that and how him and Bobby spent a lot of time having discussions about what freedom is for Black people. Let's see. Bobby eventually aligned with Huey's point, which we see that on page 110. Bobby also continued, and this was something else that was pretty interesting to me, was that, Huey left the Afro-American Association with, I think it was Oakland, where he was attending school, with Donald Worden, as the header up of that. And, Bobby Seale continued to put a lot of his effort into that. And I think that was very reflective of the fact that a lot of, Black people at the time, especially given the political climate, they were looking for something where they can be active in bringing about their liberation. And Bobby was, joining like different organizations centered around the campus for that reason. And so he was involved with the Afro-American Association still, put a lot of energy into that. He ends up leaving that organization. And after Bobby left that, then he got involved with RAM, which is short for Revolutionary Action Movement. And Huey had already talked about his involvement with that in this book. So on page 111, it goes into, and this is actually my read that back. So if you got those, go ahead and post it for chapter 15. But it says, Bobby and I entered into a period of intense exploration, trying to solve some of the ideological problems of the Black movement. Partly, we needed to explain to our own satisfaction why no Black political organization had succeeded. The only one we thought had promised long-term success was the Organization of Afro-American Unity started by Malcolm X. But Malcolm had died too soon to pull his program together. Malcolm's slogan had been freedom by any means necessary. But nothing we saw was taking us there. We still had only a vague conception of what freedom ought to mean to Black people, except the abstract terms borrowed from politicians. And that did not help the people on the block at all. Those lofty words were meant for intellectuals and the bourgeoisie who were already fairly comfortable. And I just think it's just, this book, and just like even today, how many organizations do we have out there that are, supposedly for Black people, about the freedom of Black people, and they're not doing anything? And how many of you remember when you became more and more aware of how wrong of a position that Black people and colonized people were? I mean, whether it be through when you learned about the Mike Brown situation, whether it been the Sandra Bland or any other case that didn't necessarily meet national headlines, where you knew you had to do something, and then you went through where you were trying to get involved with all these different organizations, and none of them had a platform, none of them had a protocol as to how to make this stop happening, other than voting or going through some colonial avenue of basically begging the system to stop targeting you. So I think that program is so profound. And then just the mention of of course, I mean, a lot of Huey's influence comes from Malcolm, and it's very evident in the way that he writes. But just having studied the Organization of Afro-American Unity, this was something that Malcolm did put a lot of thought into, and he did very much say, by any means necessary, and he did believe that Black people should arm. He did speak on the ballot or the bullet, and he was very vocal about that. And then that just takes them into, this again is the forefront of the Black Panther Party. Let's see. And it says criticisms around this organization was that they wrote and spoke. Okay, so we're talking about RAM, where he mentions, Bobby Seale's involvement with that. I think Huey also has some involvement with RAM at first, but he also talks about how this organization, they would talk a good game, but as far as actually putting anything into action, they were very much against that. There was another organization where the organization was called Soul Students Advisory Council. They talk about this on page 112, and he says this is really a front for RAM. And it wasn't an intellectual organization like RAM was, but it could appeal to like a lot of lower class brothers or brothers on the block that didn't have a lot of, college experience or things of that sort, but they, could be involved in something, essentially. Huey and Bobby wanted to see if they could get the Soul students to adopt a program of armed self-defense. And when they approached them, they, to put it in a nutshell, they shut it down. They didn't really want any involvement with that. Huey felt that this would be good because the people in the community, the people in the community could actually feel empowered by, one, understanding that they could own a gun or own self-defense weapons, and, and they weren't defenseless against the police that would come into their neighborhoods and terrorize them, right? And so, but the soul students felt like that would be really intimidating, and they didn't feel like this was the best approach, so they didn't want that. It says on page 113, we explained all this to soul students and showed them that we did not intend to break any laws, but we're concerned that the organization start dealing with reality rather than sit around intellectualizing and writing essays about the white man. We wanted them to dedicate themselves to armed self-defense with the full understanding that this was defense for the survival of Black people in general, and in particular for the cultural program we were trying to establish. As we saw it, Blacks were getting ripped off everywhere. The police had given us no choice but to defend ourselves against their brutality. On the campus, we were being miseducated. We had no courses dealing with our real needs and problems, courses that taught us how to survive. Our program was designed to lead the brothers into self-defense before they were completely wiped out physically and mentally. And so, they said that the weapons were actually a recruiting device, and a lot of brothers were turned on to the fact of getting involved with them because of the fact that a lot of brothers didn't even know that it was even a constitutional right, so to speak, that they could get a weapon and actually defend themselves, defend their household, and that it was actually effective. Let's see. And so, we talked about Bobby having a knack for acting. So then he goes into, Bobby Seale actually has, they would actually use Bobby's talent in like stand-up comedy and acting and stuff. He could do a lot of impersonations when they would go and talk to the brothers out on the block. Bobby's just talent would actually get them involved and everything like that. And I thought that was pretty cool. Because that's not something I remember. When I hear about Bobby Seale, I don't really hear so much about his acting talent and his stand-up comedian talent. But they said they would use that to talk to people out in the community. So I thought that was pretty cool. So let me look and see what y'all said about your hashtag read that back. Excuse me, y'all. Just Commie Gang. Yep. Okay. Roan said his read that back is on page 111 and 16. The oppressor. Okay, let's look and see. You said page 111. Okay. Chapter 16, the oppressor. Let's see what you said. Roan, you said. Looking for your paragraph. Let's see. I wonder if you have a... You may have to pull that out. I'm wondering if you might have a different version, Roan. Write out a little bit more of your comment and then I can read that out. Who it controlled them was controlling us both directly and indirectly. Yes, I do remember that. And yes, I totally unite with that. Latoya Love, okay, let's see what she's talking about. Latoya Love says, okay, so with all this information we've learned, are we ever actually going to do something, just continue to talk and teach? Latoya, I don't know if you follow Black Hammer, but, that's what we do in Black Hammer. We talk, we teach, and we act. So, I don't know. Check us out, sis. We have known this information. Let's see. She's still talking. We have known this information for over 100 years, yet nothing is being done. Latoya, do you know that we are a target for the police, the government, and anytime the Black Panther Party was actually infiltrated before it was actually dismantled? So this is something that's an ongoing issue, and one of the things that we have to do is we do have to teach. Political education is something that's very important because we need to know the history of the Black liberation movement, the freedom fighters, colonized people's struggles before we can do anything to move forward. Because even if you want to frame it in that mistakes were made, that's how you move forward so that you don't make the same mistakes over and over again. So teaching is fundamental in learning from your mistakes, and learning a strategy to put in place so that we can get free. But if we don't do these types of things, people will not understand what's happened in the first place so that we can make a strategy around that. So you should go to blackhammer.com, check out the campaigns that we've done for the community, so that you can see that we are not just talking, that we are actually acting as well as teaching the community about their history and about what they can do to get free. All right, sis? All right, so let's see. Kimya says, read that back. Seal. Sorry, y'all. All right, Seal is the heir to the early organizing efforts of young blacks and whites in the rural South. He inherits the demand of the early 60s students that fundamental Constitution guarantees and promises so long violated by illegitimate white power be immediately honored while reserving the right to attack the system itself. Julian Bond, A Time to Speak, A Time to Act, page 109. Black Power. All right, y'all. So, yeah, I enjoyed that about Bobby Seale. And then just even the end of the chapter where he's discussing, again, he's going back to Ram, Understanding the difficulty. Listen, we underestimated the difficulty of bringing the brothers around. Soul students completely rejected our program. Those brothers had been so intimidated by police firepower, they would not give any serious consideration to strapping on a gun, legal or not. And just, it just most of the programs, most of the organizations that we see out there today, this is their thing. They're more about talking and about creating a platform and not really about the people at all. Let's see. Yeah, so basically at the end of this chapter, RAM rejected their program of armed self-defense. So did soul students, and they just felt like they were kind of left out. So now that leads us to chapter 16, where we discuss, and it's one of my favorite chapters in any book that I've ever read. Any of the committees that I lead up in the organization, this is probably a political education that we use quite often. But it's the founding of the Black Panther Party, and I'm really excited to go through this. And I'll even start out this chapter with a quote. It says, "As a sapling bent low stores energy for violent backswing, blacks bent double by oppression have stored energy which will be released in the form of rage, black rage, apocalyptic and final." And that quote is by William Greer and Price Cobbs from Black Rage. Just another reminder before we go into this chapter, please donate to the book club. You can go to Cash App, $, BH Book Club. That's BH Book Club all together. The book club does serve as a fundraiser for the Black Hammer organization. We're constantly trying to build the book club and its capabilities and the things that we can do for you all. And then also the things that we're trying to build in the Black Hammer organization itself. So please donate at BH Book Club. You can also go to the website, www.blackhammer.org /donate. You can also donate at www.gofundme.com /blackhammer.org. So any of those platforms are fine for you to donate, but donate. All right, y'all. So the founding of the Black Panther Party. So, of course, they've run into all this frustration with these organizations that say they're for the people, and then it's totally not for the people. So he's basically discussing how he and Bobby founded the organization together. They hadn't even really at the beginning, they hadn't even planned to start an organization of their own. But what motivated them to do it was the intimidation that the pigs were giving out in their neighborhoods. We'll get there. But then also they're talking about Martin Luther King and how he had come into Watts and he spoke there, and how Martin Luther King, we know this, was a very huge, he really went for nonviolence. But we also know that the police, they're gonna use violence whenever they feel necessary to do that. So Huey talks about how the California Highway Patrol began to carry their shotguns in full view whenever they would enter the neighborhoods, and how this is obviously was an intimidation tactic that was being used, and that he said that this is where the Black Panther Party founding came from, because if they can come into our neighborhoods to intimidate us, why can't we act within our legal constitutional right to bear arms and protect ourselves? If we feel threatened against them, then we should be able to, defend ourselves if necessary. And so on page 116, Huey talks about how they're still involved with the soul students. They still go to a few meetings, but even the meetings they would go to, they still were disruptive, and the questions they would raise would upset people. And of course, you can think of if you call yourself a revolutionary, how many times do you have a question for somebody who's been on the fence, or even who's not anywhere near where you are, that pisses them the fuck off if you ask a real legitimate question about the liberation of black and colonized people. It usually pisses them off. They don't even just disagree. They get pissed off. So he says their conversations, Bobby Seale and Huey Newton, their conversation actually became more important. Excuse me, y'all. Because they're more so political education sessions. And so they would have conversations with themselves. They would also have other brothers from the block to come in and have conversations together. And, he says that the party grew out of those types of sessions. So he said that a lot of these sessions took place at Bobby Seale's home. He lived close to the campus. So, it would just be in his living room, and they would have that. They would read and discuss like literature. They were reading things like The Wretched of the Earth, the 4 volumes of Chairman Mao, Che Guevara. They discuss these things and what that meant. And they even go into detail about the ways in which liberation was won in those types of governments. I appreciated this because he outlined here how, in those types of governments, revolution or liberation was achieved a certain way, but they didn't follow. Huey said that the platform that they created didn't follow that because of the type of government that was set up to begin with. So think about how important it is to understand the government that you're dealing with, and whether the way that these people achieve liberation, even though we're going to support these people's efforts to get free, you understand that's not the way we can do it here. So what it may mean for us to be free here, it may be a totally different trajectory of how to get there from somebody, from another group of people in this area. But I like how he outlined that. He even goes into detail on page 117. He said, Fanon made a statement during the Algerian War that impressed me. He said, it was the year of the boomerang, which is the third phase of violence. At that point, the violence of the aggressor turns on him and strikes a killing blow, yet the oppressor does not understand the process. He knows no more than he did in the first place when he launched the violence. The oppressed are always defensive. The oppressor is always aggressive and surprised when the people turn back on him, the force he has used against them. And so, I just thought that was great. I've also always been interested on when he talks about Negroes with guns on page 117, where he discusses Robert Williams, who was, I guess, somebody who had, I think he led a chapter. Oh yeah, he was the president of the chapter in Monroe, North Carolina. But this group, he talks about how they would constantly call on aid from the government, even though the government does not and has never supported Negroes with guns ever. And then there was also another group of it says Deacons of Defense for Justice in Louisiana. One of their leaders had also done the same thing, and they were about self-defense, but again, they would enlist like local sheriffs and police to defend marchers and things of that sort. And Huey made it very clear that in their founding of this organization, they viewed these entities as the enemy, and rightfully so, and that was a criticism that he had of those groups. We also, and go ahead and put up your hashtag Read That Backs for chapter 16. And then we'll go over those in a minute. He also talks about Malcolm's program again of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. He said it was, we know it was never put in operation. We know why. And this is something that I really, really enjoyed about this chapter. But he said that we continue to believe that the Black Panther Party exists in the spirit of Malcolm. Let's see. Okay. And it says, therefore, the words on this page cannot convey, this is the bottom of page 118, the effect that Malcolm has had on the Black Panther Party, although, as far as I'm concerned, the party is a living testament to his life work. I do not claim that the party has done what Malcolm would have done. Many others say that their programs are Malcolm's programs. We do not say this, but Malcolm's spirit is in us.
From all these things, the books, Malcolm's writings and spirit, our analysis of the local situation, the idea of an organization was forming. One day, quite suddenly, almost by chance, we found a name. I read a pamphlet about voter registration in Mississippi, how the people in Lowndes County had armed themselves against establishment violence. Their political group, called the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, had a Black Panther for its symbol. A few days later, while Bobby and I were rapping, I suggested we use the panther as our symbol and call our political vehicle the Black Panther Party. The panther is a fierce animal, but he will not attack unless he is backed into a corner, and then he will strike out. So, that was how they got the name. That was, the symbolism behind it, which obviously that's very fitting. And then just the fact that they reference Malcolm's programs, the fact that, Malcolm was assassinated in 1965, and then this is coming into fruition in 1966, 67, and how it just continues to move, to move in. You have this part, they were reading Malcolm's speeches, just like we're reading Malcolm's speeches, just like we're studying what they talked about and what they actually put into place. So again, LaToya, this is why this is necessary, because you can't know, and this may sound cliche as fuck, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. And so this is the only way that we're going to find our way into freedom, is by studying what our heroes have done prior to, what they've laid out for us to follow. So I really appreciated that chapter. So let me go into y'all's read that backs. I think I said my read that back already, y'all. Mine was on page 118. I just read it when we were talking about Malcolm at the end. But let me read y'all's. Excuse me, while I read y'all's read that back, y'all's comments. Okay. All right, Quayshawn, are you asking about camera reduce about programs? Thank you, Quayshawn, for responding to that, sister. Literally. Y'all ain't had no read that back? I love that chapter, y'all. I probably read that chapter. I read that chapter frequently just because it reminds me a lot of what Black Hammer is doing now, and I just think that I think it's just amazing, because if you see here, Bobby and Huey were the two that started the organization. And let's see, it looks like somebody just posted something. I had to read that back. Okay, what you got, Kimya? For chapter 17, to be arrested for having weapons would be a setback to our program in teaching people their constitutional right to bear arms. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and that was something Huey was not trying to be reactionary and just go and piss off a bunch of cops. He was doing it to show people, to educate people their right to have a gun, and then give them the ability to understand that they had a right to defend themselves to begin with. So that is very important. But he wasn't trying to go out here and just start fights with cops because he didn't like cops or because he was pissed off about what cops have been doing. He was, but you have a strategy that you're trying to put in place here so that you're empowering a community of people to have a way to defend themselves, rather than just riling up a bunch of people who are pissed off, and then they're going to end up dead because not only did they not have a way to defend themselves, they didn't care to understand, they just wanted to react. So I think, yes, that's very important, in that he was trying to be strategic in the way that we do things. And there's other organizations that I've seen that do the same thing, that we have a discussion before we go out. This is how we're going to conduct ourselves. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're not going to do. And then at the end, we sum it up and see how we carried out our plan. So, okay. So Ron, that was chapter 17, but that's cool because we getting ready to go into chapter 17, and your quote was very relevant to what we were discussing. So, What you got, Kimya? Did you already post or read that back? All right, cool beans.
So chapter 17 is patrolling. So this is the first thing that the Black Panther Party rolled out in their community. And I'll start it off with another quote. Okay, what you got?
Did I miss it? I thought I... Chapter 17 entirely was very powerful. Reminded me a lot about my own org. Absolutely, Gigi. I had to read that back. I just want to make sure I didn't. Okay. All right.
Cool beans. So let's we'll go ahead and get into chapter 17. I don't know, I thought I had read yours, Kimya, but if you have another one or if I missed it, post it again and I'll reread it again, even if we're in chapter 17. Either way, I want to make sure everybody gets in all the discussion that they want. All right, so chapter 17 is patrolling. So he talks about how in 1966 they didn't have the Black Panther Party did not have a definite program yet. They didn't have anything that they were officially rolling out. Still without a definite program, we were at the stage of testing ideas that would capture the imagination of the community. So what they eventually go with is they want to start patrolling the police because they know the police are terrorizing their neighborhoods. They're using that as a way to let the brothers know that they have a right to not only possess a weapon, but to use it if they feel threatened. And they said that this is what got a lot of brothers interested in joining or learning more about the Black Panther Party is just because a lot of them just didn't know that they could even have a gun. It never even crossed their mind that they could even have a gun. And so, and then Huey was also very knowledgeable of the law because he he took a lot of law courses at Oakland City and San Francisco Law School. So he was able to educate the brothers in the neighborhood about their rights to own weapons. He also had access to the library in North Oakland because I think he said Bobby worked there. He also made a point to say, which I found interesting, unfortunately, most of them dealt with civil law since the anti-poverty program was not supposed to advise poor people about criminal law. So, not surprising there, but so they actually circulated the Black communities throughout that area, Richmond, Berkeley, Oakland, San Francisco, wherever they could find Black people, they would go out there and basically talk to them about their right to arm. In general, though, he said that they got a lot of skepticism back from the community because they didn't know if they should be walking around with guns. They felt like that could antagonize the police. And they didn't really want to be subject to that. Let's see. To recruit any sizable number of street brothers, we would obviously have to do more than talk. We needed to give practical applications of our theory and show them that we were not afraid of weapons and we weren't afraid of death. So just by standing up for yourself and just kind of like, we're going to defend ourselves by any means necessary. And it says the way that they finally won the brothers over was by patrolling the police with arms. And before they begun doing that, they sat down and they wrote out a course of action. And so we go into where they talked about, like, basically Huey's basically spitting out what he sees, and then Bobby is writing it all down, and then they come up with the Black Panther Party platform and program, what we want, what we believe. And this was done in October of 1966. So this is on page 122, and it goes over into page 125, where they list their 10 points. So I'll read it, and I'll try not to make it too long. But number one is we want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our Black community. We believe that black people will not be free until we're able to determine our own destiny. Point number 2 is we want full employment of our people. We believe that the federal government is responsible and obligated to give every man employment or guaranteed income. We believe that if the white American businessman will not give full employment, that means production should be taken from businessmen and placed in the community so that the people of the community can organize and employ all of its people and give a high standard of living. Number 3 is we want to end to the robbery by capitalists of our black community. Number 4 is we want decent housing fit for shelter of human beings. Number 5, we want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. We want all black men to be exempt from military service. I like them all, but I like this one especially because even today I still don't feel like any black man has any place in the military or really in the police force. We believe that black people should not be forced to fight in the military service to defend a racist government that does not protect us. We will not fight and kill other people of color in the world who, like black people, are being victimized by the white racist government of America. We will protect ourselves from the force and violence of the racist police and the racist military by whatever means necessary. Number 7, we want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people. We believe we can end police brutality in our black community by organizing black self-defense groups that are dedicated to defending our black community from racist police oppression and brutality. The Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States gives a right to bear arms. We therefore believe that all black people should arm themselves for self-defense. We want freedom for all black men held in federal, state, county, and city prisons and jails. We believe that all black people should be released from the many jails and prisons because they have not received a fair and impartial trial. And he goes into detail about that because he says that if we are going to be tried in the court of law like that, then what good will it do if you have a bunch of people who know nothing about the way that you live, know nothing about your culture, know nothing about anything? Then that's not really a group of your peers. That's more a group of people who already have racial bias, and they're going to judge based on what they feel like white America feels that any black criminal should however they should be sentenced. And so he discusses that, and I think that's important. We want land grant. Number 10 is, okay, hold on a second. I think I skipped number 9. So we want all black people who, when brought to trial, to be tried in a court of a jury by their peer group or people from their communities as defined by the Constitution of the United States. We believe that the court should follow the United States Constitution so that black people will receive fair trials. The 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution gives a man a right to be tried in his peer group. A peer is I love the fact that he defines this. A peer is a person from a similar economic, social, religious, geographical, environmental, historical, and racial background. To do this, the court will be forced to select a jury from the black community of which the black defendant came. We have been and are being tried by all white juries that have no understanding of the average reasoning man of the black community. So that's important. And then number 10 says we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace as our major political objective. A United Nations supervised plebiscite to be held throughout the black colony, in which only black colonial subjects will be allowed to participate for the purpose of determining the will of black people as their national destiny. And he goes into detail about that. And at the end of the paragraph on page 125, it says, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such a government and to provide new guards for their future security. So what I got from this is if that government is not doing what it said it would do, then that community that it's really like that government is in a breach of a contract, and that community should be able to get away from that government and then find its own government so that it can defend itself properly and provide the necessities of that community that are needed. So that was important to this 10-point program, reading that was, I think, very powerful. In how they, put this in paper. And then after that, a chairman was Bobby. And then Huey chose the position of Minister of Defense. And it says later as a footnote that they eventually dropped all the titles within the Black Panther Party in 1972. But, Huey said he didn't actually want to lead formally, and he felt like Bobby was the one for that position. Also on page 126, and go ahead and put your hashtag read that backs up for this chapter, and we'll go ahead and get to those here pretty soon. I don't know if I actually chose a read that back for this chapter. Let me see. Maybe I did. Oh, yes, I did. Okay, so that's good. Chapter 17, but page 126. I like how they were trying to bridge between what they call the street brothers and the middle class blacks, who had the necessary knowledge and skills, but they were trying to form a party that had the best of both worlds, because you have the middle class blacks that have access to certain things like the law. They know what types of they know people in certain positions that, depending on where their mindset is, or how to access certain resources and things of that sort. But then you have the street brothers who know how to really relate to the community, and they know what the community needs. They know where the community stands with things. They know the reality of what the black community is going through. So he said that he had actually approached his brother Melvin to approach a few friends about serving on the advisory cabinet, where they would be able to kind of give like advice and legal information. And when he said that when their plan became clear, they all refused and the cabinet was deferred. So, but another important part about this chapter is that they introduce Lil Bobby Hutton was the third member of the Black Panther Party. And of course, if you know the story of Lil Bobby Hutton, he was murdered. He was assassinated by the police. And that's actually my read that back. At the bottom is a footnote here about him. But he was 15 years old when he joined. And he was actually the Black Panther Party's first treasurer. And he comes from a big family. He was the youngest of seven children. He was from Arkansas. He had actually moved to Oakland, and he was just so dedicated, like, to the purpose and the mission of the Black Panther Party at 15. And we have some people like that in Black Hammer. So yeah, it's amazing. Shout out Nyah. And so, we have so many, just the fact that he was that young and he was already reading, and I know there are contradictions. I will say this. There are contradictions with W.E.B. Du Bois. There are contradictions, but he's reading this material at this time, even just to gain a better understanding. Huey refers to him as a serious revolutionary, and he said there was nothing grim about him. He was very charming and just very, and just the way he died, to carry out the purpose of the Black Panther Party, like, fearlessly. So I'll go ahead and read that back. And it's just at the bottom of page 126. It says, on the night of April 6, 1968, 2 days after the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King, Black Panthers riding in 3 cars transporting food and supplies for a barbecue picnic to be held in the black community the next day were ambushed by police. In the shootout that followed, Little Bobby Hutton and another Black Panther Party member, Eldridge Cleaver, were trapped by the police in the basement of a house on 28th Street in Oakland. The police fired upon the house with rifles, pistols, shotguns, tear gas, and fire bombs for 90 minutes. 90 minutes. After which, Little Bobby came out with his hands in the air. In cold blood, the police shot him dead in the street. He was 17 years old. I don't understand. Well, I'm having a hard time understanding what meeting, what resolution, even if I wanted to entertain the idea of a resolution with the police. All of these casualties, all of these bodies, our children that have been murdered by these animals, I'm not understanding what resolution we could come to with them. Why would you want to compromise the losses that we as the Black community and as the colonized community have suffered, because now we want to make it to where we can talk to y'all and y'all don't kill us? I'll never understand that. But I thought that was pretty heavy to read about Bobby Hutton here, and just know more about his service to the Black Panther Party. Anyway, so then Huey goes into detail about how they started to implement their 10-point program. And I'm going to go, if you guys haven't already, please put your hashtag read that backs up, and I will go over here and read them here in a second. But they're starting their 10-point program, interested primarily in educating and revolutionizing the community. So, of course, point 7 is they wanted an immediate end to police brutality, the murder of Black people, and then they recognized it as a huge issue in their communities. So he said they had a lot of success from it because they were able to witness these things happening in their communities. They're able to intervene when necessary. They're carrying weapons where they're in full view, and the police are responding with a lot of fear because they're not used to being not only are they not used to being approached by Black people with guns or weapons, they're not used to being approached by Black people who actually know what their colonial rights are, so to speak. It says at the bottom of page 127, he said, frightened and confused, the police did not know how to respond. So he said at first the patrols were a total success. And then, of course, we know that the police, the pigs, they don't play fair. And they were very careful with following the law. Nothing they did was not lawful. Huey was very knowledgeable about the penal code in California. After witnessing what the Black Panthers were doing, he says on page 128, many citizens came right out of jail and into the party. So they would actually go the lengths of trying to get these people bailed out after they were arrested for whatever reason. And they would go and they would try to get these people out. And then a lot of people would come right into the party after the fact. So they would make this a daily thing where they would go out and do their watch. They would follow police around. They would, of course, the police were getting tired of that, and they would start following them and everything like that. And so as they grew as a party, their patrols grew, and they were able to go to different places and have more people out to where they could follow them around. So let me read that back, and then we'll finish up, and hopefully I can get some of y'all to join Black Hammer.
What y'all got? Read that back. Anybody got to read that back that I haven't seen? I may be having.
Any read that backs from chapter 17? I know we read Rones earlier. Well, while I'm waiting on you guys to do that, I'm going to go ahead and just finish up the chapter. They're discussing how they actually passed out their literature, their 10-point program. They would pass it out to people on the street that they were trying to, recruit. And they educated them about their rights concerning weapons. And then this caused their membership to grow. And of course, he goes into why they were required to keep their activities within legal bounds. And during their political education classes, they would reiterate this and why. They also, this was something I found very interesting, is when they started, they knew it was illegal to curse at a pig. So that's why they came up with calling them swine and pigs to begin with. But they didn't curse because this would cause them to get arrested. And they didn't want to be arrested with weapons on them. So, anyway, they said that soon the pigs began to retaliate against them, and they knew this was coming. So, they pretty much prepared for this. The pigs began to use illegal tactics. They weren't playing fair. He talks about, there's an incident where he actually goes into a person's house, and basically intervenes. Actually, they were going into the Black Panther Party office, and a kid comes up and tells them, the pigs are at my house, they're destroying our house, they're tearing up everything. And then Huey goes to the house, intervenes. They end up being arrested. Huey ends up being arrested. I think the father of the child was arrested. And they were out because they didn't do anything illegal, but they, that pigs were really pissed off that they intervened. They were looking for a shotgun in the house, and they couldn't find what they were looking for, so they were just terrorizing this family just because, basically the patrolling had gotten to a point where the pigs felt like they were losing control. Wow. I mean, this was Comrade Gigi said earlier that this was a very powerful chapter, and it was, because just think how much we could do if we came together. If you joined Black Hammer, we could do all of this and more. And so I just thought this chapter was very powerful in that you have these people that are joining and really starting to take their empowerment back, that they know that they can, and even the father of that situation, what did he say? Well, they were trying to make Huey leave, and it was actually the father actually arrived during the argument, and they were trying to tell him, you need to make these Panthers leave because they're the ones that's causing trouble. And the father said before that he didn't like the Panthers, but after he learned more about them, because the press, and Huey says the press was painting them, of course, in a very bad picture, making them seem like they were just out here threatening cops, running around with their guns, beating people up, and then people would actually see the Panthers in action and realize that what the media was saying was a lie. And the father here even says, before this, I didn't like the Panthers. I had heard bad things about them, but in the last few minutes, I've changed my mind because they helped my son when you pushed them around. And then this pissed the cops off even more. And again, they found a way to arrest. They even cursed at Huey, and he responded with self-composure, and he just continued to call them pigs and swine and things of that sort without cursing at them. And I admire that a lot about Huey, because I don't know that I would be able to do that, but he was. So anyway, let me get to your comments to see if you have any
for this chapter. I thought this was a very powerful chapter. All right, so Comrade Gigi says, her read that back was page 124. The police wanted me badly, but they needed to do their dirty work out of view of the community. When a citizen was unarmed, they brutalized him any time, almost casually. But when he was prepared to defend himself, the police became a little more than criminals. Working at night. This is why we got to stand for each other when we see the pigs doing dirty work. This is why we got to aim and protect ourselves and our communities at all cost. I hope y'all can hear me when I was reading that. I actually had gotten to a point which, it's a lot of planning that needs to go into this, but I'd gotten to a point where I had started to, whenever I saw a black person or somebody colonized that was pulled over, I would pull over like just a little bit down the way, just in case something seemed to go rogue. And I'm not saying I would necessarily, like I said, I think that there's some planning that needs to go into that, but I'd started to do that just because I wanted to make sure that if something went rogue, I'd be there to either capture it, or I'd be there to intervene, or at least let the pigs know that they weren't out of view of anything, and that I could see them treating this person this way, and I wasn't going to go anywhere until, they stopped or whatever. And this was just a couple of years ago. And I do think that if, you see it in a lot of neighborhoods where, a lot of people are standing outside and then something's happening, and, people, they're recording it, but, nobody's really able to intervene or do anything to stop what's happening. And I would really like to see something like this implemented again, just to have like a sense of community. And like I said, just to have a bunch of people who know what their rights are, who know the gun laws, and who have self-defense measures in place. I don't see why there would be anything wrong with that, doing that. And that's very basic. That's very basic. But I know a lot of black people in general, some people feel like that's what they call vigilanteism, and they feel that, they're going against what they should not do. A lot of times there's contradictions with their religious beliefs, in that they feel like they're holding on to something that they shouldn't. And, with all that being said, I really think that it would be suicidal for us not to do anything. But I really enjoyed these last 4 chapters that we've read, especially just reading about the formation of the party. I hope y'all enjoyed it too. I'm gonna make a call for, let me make sure nobody else said anything. Okay, so I'm gonna make a call for membership. So if you're not already a member of Black Hammer, or if you have questions about how we can bring this work into fruition, how we can create these different avenues that will enable us to create our liberation, this is the organization for you. If you say that you're tired of all this teaching and not enough, well, this is the organization for you, because we do more than just talk. We do more than just the political education. This is where we make shit happen. This is where we actually are in the grips of the community, because we are the community. And so if you want to see things in action, if you actually want to see us get our liberation, then this is the organization for you to join. If you want to join, where you go is www.blackhammer.org/join/ I think, or sign up.
sign up. That's it. www.blackhammer.org/sign up/. The link should be there. If you sign up, I will be in contact with you, myself, and then someone from the membership committee. We will be in contact with you, and then we will also put you in contact with the committee that you want to get involved with. We have a lot of great committees where we're actually doing the work. We have our campaigns committee where right now we are fighting for 2 African girls in Alabama who are being exposed to a man that sexually abused them, and we're trying to do what it takes to get them out of that household. We have we feed the homeless in our communities. We've done that in Orlando. We've done it in Savannah. We protest when our children are being unjustly targeted by the system, like we did in our little C-Note campaign. We are not just about sitting around and reading books, even though that is a great thing to do, and I couldn't get enough of reading revolutionary literature, but we are doing the work. We do outreach opportunities whenever they present themselves. But we also know that the other committee that we have is where we are bringing this to you all so that you can learn about what your heroes did for you before. And so the Revolutionary Book Club, it needs people to help make this possible. So, join today. And you can join for as little as $5 a month. And every week we meet. Everybody can come on and you can see how your money is being spent. So this is an organization that is about action, is about the community. So join today, drop a fist in the comments. I'll be in contact with you myself. Let me also go back up because I think somebody else made a comment. You're right, Kimya. It is a lot of points in chapter 17 because it was a lengthier chapter than we're used to with this book, but it was so many points. I don't know if I even read that. Did I read that? I like the quote that the chapter 17 was started out with. The only way to police a ghetto is to be oppressive. Not the police commissioners' men. None of the police commissioners' men, even with the best will in the world, have any way of understanding the lives led by people they swagger about in 2s and 3s controlling. Their very presence is an insult. And it would be, even if they spent their entire day feeding gumdrops to children, they represent the force of the white world. And that world's real intentions are simply for the world's criminal profit and ease, to keep the black man corralled up here in his place. I highlighted that. I think that was a very powerful quote. That was by James Baldwin. And that's from a work he did called that was in a work called Nobody Knows My Name, and his work, I guess, was called The Fifth Avenue Uptown. So I just thought that was really a powerful quote, because just like they'll always come out and put this shit out here about a pig playing with the kids in our neighborhoods, and it burns me up to see niggas sharing this shit. And I'm just like, why are y'all sharing these pigs who the next day could be in your neighborhoods with their guns in your kids' faces? Like, but it is an insult. It should be an insult for them to even be in your neighborhood. So I thought that was necessary. But you're right, Kimya. There were so many points in this. I highlighted the whole 10-point platform. It was a lot in here, really deep. So I would encourage people to go back and read that chapter and really marinate on that chapter, because, again, that was the first element that the Black Panther Party rolled out. They got a lot of people involved. And anyways, next week, hopefully my comrade will be feeling better next week, and we'll be back together bringing this political education to you. We're going to read chapters 18, 19, and 20. I think that'll be good for next week. 18, 19, and 20. And we're going to start off with Eldridge Cleaver, so that ought to be interesting. So 18, 19, and 20 for next week. Join Black Hammer today. Drop a fist in the comment section. Visit www.blackhammer.org/sign up/ and sign up today. And we will get you into this work. And then you will see that we are about action and not just talking. All right? All right, Black Power, y'all. Thank you for bearing with me. And I'll see you next week.